nuclear waste morning. It's Sunday. Pardon. The nuclear waste conversation from some 140, who knows how many sites in total. There's fuse wrap sites, there's EPA sites, there's DOE sites, and there's every nuclear processing plant, fuel facility out there. So these have become, they were unacceptable, right? We were trying to stop this. We were trying to change the direction of this, maybe. It's not against science. You can't, science is a human debate of value. So the fuel constituents, what is in nuclear fuel? What is the waste of nuclear fuel? Well, it turns out some of the waste of nuclear fuel, a lot of the waste is in making the fuel itself. The mining, tons of earth for grams of materials. Tons of earth move from a mountainside or mine to a processing facility where parts of that facility become contaminated, some of it environmental chemical pollutions. Others is radiological pollution, because in the final processing the materials left are there. It's just a matter of constituents and the purities. So what's in the fuel is a very good conversation. They're called fuel pellets. Usually in my mind, when I'm speaking to fuel, I'm speaking to the fuel pellets themselves. So when you speak to that, the ratios of components inside the pellet is all you're speaking to, not anything else surrounding the pellet. But the pellet is surrounded by specialty materials, special cladding, to do some very exacting sciences and not do some other very exacting sciences like self-destruct over time. But the cladding does deteriorate. That's why introducing impurities into the water that surrounds the cladding is so critical. We can't afford to have the cladding collapse and decay. You're going to have a pile of pellets at the bottom of something, maybe 3 generations away, 4 generations away. Now those pellets are in a different geometry. All these things matter in this conversation with fuel pellets. So they're all close together. They're bundled up like a little pile of charcoal down the bottom of a barrel somewhere. Generations. But now that is a criticality potential. It already was minor, given the fuel separation rules, but now it's a pile of charcoal in the bottom of a barrel in a deep mine somewhere, creating a criticality event. What does that mean? Well, that's another longer video. So those fuel pellets themselves are generally what I speak to, but other people speak to the fuel bundles, the fuel rods, which is the full pellets and containment for the pellets, which is the outside of the casing, the fuel rods. Zircaloys, special ultra-high purity metals forged in special places with lots of rules. They have to follow rules, speed limit signs. So in the manufacturing, critical stuff. Neighbor and associate works with alpha particles and the amazing things we do with them today. So we know about this stuff. And the conversations can get convoluted because keeping a common denominator, a fuel pellet versus a fuel bundle, the weight of the fuel bundle, a known mass to how many decimal places, is a common measurement. It's what they do. So Nuclear fuel, nuclear waste. This opens up a bigger conversation about all these little byproducts I've spoken to. Now we've got fuel bundles sitting out there in wherevers, in dry casks. Are they vented dry casks or are they closed dry casks? Are they special gas-filled dry casks? I would hope so. Pressurized? I would hope so. Monitored ad nauseum? I would hope so. Fuel, nuclear waste conversation. So that bigger conversation I was referring to is, what is nuclear waste? What are the levels of waste? How do you make waste go from one thing to another? There's a number of things you can call it. In the glass vitrification world, the initial design was to make glass beads in the air that it would encapsulate the materials. The final design ended up being molten glass, liquid glass poured into drums. That was always an alternative, but the primary design was little glass beads that would be put into drums, and then the drums would be sequestered somewhere. I don't know. That had never been, but that was a low-level nuclear waste processing facility. That was its design. Now go into the definitions of low-level nuclear waste, and you might find it in becquerels, which is interesting. In other videos, you might find it in pounds per kilogram, pounds per ton, pounds per ounces, grams, all types of measurements, and sometimes losing that common denominator. The fuel pellet, the main concern in the conversation, versus the fuel bundle, the fuel core. That's how it works.